When the person you're dating starts trying to avoid you like the red dodgeball in eighth grade gym class, when they stop texting you back, they're not keeping plans that they've made, it feels like you have to beg for their attention, or maybe they're not willing to have an emotional conversation that's deeper than what the two of you both had for lunch, then you're probably dealing with breadcrumbing. And you're most likely dealing with an avoidant attachment style coming through on their end. So today we're going to be talking specifically about what is breadcrumbing and how to respond to it. How does an anxiously attached person typically respond to breadcrumbing? And why is that response going to make things worse? We're also going to talk about what a securely attached individual does when they're breadcrumbed and some of the differences. And I'm going to give you some clear ideas on how to move forward if you feel like you're in the middle of being breadcrumbed right now. And in case we haven't met yet, my name is Trevor. I help people go from anxiously attached to securely attached in my program called the Secure Self Club, where we help you make that transition in just 4 months. Okay, so today's topic, breadcrumbing. Let's really define it. I know I gave you some examples like they're no longer texting you back as quickly, or they seem to be less affectionate in their conversations or communication. They're making plans, but they're breaking plans. It all of a sudden feels like their time and attention becomes more scarce. It's difficult for them to get them to show up for anything for you. And you feel like you're just getting the breadcrumbs rather than the whole meal, rather than the whole loaf of bread. If that's, if we talk about somebody's time and attention and commitment, they have a full loaf to give you. They have the opportunity to fully commit to you, but you feel like something has shifted and they're only just giving you little bits of breadcrumbs. And maybe it's not that it's shifted. It might be this way from the beginning of a relationship where you feel like you really have to pursue hard, beg, and make yourself infinitely available so that when they, in their own due time, decide to give you attention, you're eager, ready to receive that attention. If you feel like you're in this situation at all, today's video is really going to give you clarity on some pitfalls you might get stuck in and how to avoid those pitfalls to create a more healthy relationship. So now that we kind of understand what breadcrumbing is, let's talk specifically around why does it happen? There's many reasons why, but one really classic reason that you're probably facing right now is when a person with an avoidant attachment style gets triggered due to the closeness that's built in a relationship. That scenario happens when you are in a relationship, it's working out okay, and then they stop giving you the full loaf and they start just giving you breadcrumbs. It's usually when the avoidant gets triggered. On the other side is more of that avoidant attachment style that isn't necessarily triggered. They're just protecting themselves from the very beginning, not willing to give you the full loaf even from the start. They're just giving you breadcrumbs. So if this sounds a little bit confusing, I'm going to break it down for you. An avoidant attachment style has core fears and wounds. They have wounds around feeling rejected or like they're not good enough. Oftentimes they have parents who were, maybe consistently there filling their physical needs, but their emotional needs were not met. And because they were consistently not met, they grew up with this programming to not trust others, essentially with the emotional parts of them. You can't trust others. You can't let others come close because there's risk in being hurt. Mom and dad didn't show up for me in that close way, in that emotional way. And so therefore, I can't trust that others are going to do it either. That's kind of the thought process that's going on in their head. And so in a relationship, closeness and commitment itself, they may say that that's what they want. And cognitively, they do want it. They'll say, yeah, I would love a relationship. Some will. Some flat out won't even say that. But a lot of them would even admit, like, yeah, I have long-term goals of a relationship. That'd be awesome. They may throw in the caveat, oh, but not right now. That's the fear. The fear is getting too close, because if you get too close, then you commit. And if you commit, then there's the opportunity for essentially betraying their heart in the same way that they've had it betrayed growing up with inconsistent, emotionally unavailable parents. And so you have to realize what's happening. As you progress in a relationship with an avoidant and you get close, it's going to trigger that fear of commitment. And so they're going to start only giving you little bits of their time and attention, not because they don't think the world of you, not because you're not good enough, not because of anything like that, but it's often just comes down to them protecting themselves from getting too close. If the relationship starts like that, which I don't even know if I would call it a relationship, I'd call it you chasing something that's not real. But if they start that way, where they don't really give you much, they're very inconsistent, then they're protecting themselves from that closeness and commitment before it even begins. But what happens in this situation is that the anxiously attached person, and specifically an anxiously attached person, usually has fears of abandonment, fears of not being good enough. They are worried around losing connection with other people. The anxiously attached will start to make this pattern of behavior about themselves. They'll start to believe things like, oh, they're breadcrumbing me. They won't even call it that usually, but they'll say, oh man, they're not giving me as much attention. Like, it must be me. I'm not good enough. There's like a negative self-worth story happening there, which we know based on what we know about the avoidant, that that's not true. It has more to do with them than it has to do with you. The anxiously attached are going to start over analyzing everything. They're going to be like looking at all the text messages, when they came in, what they said, if there's something that they feel like they said wrong that created this distance, and they're going to just take on this crazy, almost like science project of trying to map things out. I'm imagining you like in your room with like those, those like pins in the wall and like yarn between them and like photos that you took that look like sneaky paparazzi photos, and it's of your partner, and like trying to figure out what are they doing. You're going to start maybe stalking them a little bit closer on Instagram, watching their stories. Are they really busy? Are they just ignoring me? Are they with other people? And all of that is just exhausting. That's going to wear you out to no end. And what happens in that case is if you're overanalyzing like this, then by the time you actually do see this partner, you're not going to show up as your authentic, genuine self. You're most likely going to show up as what you think they want. In all of your overthinking, you've come up with some hypothesis on what you think you need to change in order to be enough for them or different. And you show up in that way. But then in showing up in that way, you're not actually being who you are. And if there's any chance of connecting with you, well, that's not going to happen, because they're not actually even going to connect with you. They're going to connect with this fake version of you that you're presenting. And so your very attempts for resolving the relationship, building closeness and connection, undermine you as you show up as an inauthentic version of yourself. An anxiously attached person is also going to see those breadcrumbs as a sign of hope. That little bit of attention that you get in between the silence, you may latch onto it as, oh yes, this is my shot, this is my opportunity. And you'll ignore all of the red flags, which is all of the silence, all of the lack of connection and commitment and communication. The 3 C's, we could call it. I just made that up. Connection, commitment, communication. You're lacking all of that. That's a red flag, but you'll hyper focus on the little bits of attention you get as if that's your answer, as if that's the bridge. But what the risk is there is that it's not actually an opportunity for connection. It's the avoidant trying to maintain some level of connection without getting too close. They don't want to fully write you off because they recognize that you're amazing, that they do like you. They like who you are. You provide a lot in their life, and they don't want to fully get rid of you. And so that's where a lot of the breadcrumbing will happen, rather than just fully shutting things down and cutting things off, because there's a part of them that does want commitment, but then there's a part of them that's terribly afraid. So it's kind of like they're trying to keep the door just cracked open wide enough. So what does a securely attached person do in this situation? Well, the securely attached person is going to recognize it as a pattern and get curious about the pattern rather than internalizing it, making it about themselves. So it's the difference in thinking, oh my gosh, they're not giving me as much now. I must not be worth it. I'm not good enough. They don't like me. Versus the secure thoughts are, something's shifted in the dynamic. This is uncomfortable. This isn't what I expected. I wonder what's going on here. And that's really stage one, is that they start to get curious rather than internalize. And because of that, they're less likely to chase and pursue, start double texting, start asking for more commitment. A secure person is going to observe the distance in the relationship as information and not as rejection. A securely attached person is going to value consistency over chemistry. Whereas if you're anxiously attached, you might get caught up in kind of this like fanciful view of the relationship and saying like, oh my gosh, but those first few moments or those first few exchanges between us, they were so amazing. And so this has to be true. And you double down and pursue even harder as the other person distances away from you. But the securely attached person in this early stage of recognizing what's going on, they have 3 distinct traits that are going to be different from the anxiously attached. Number 1, they're going to have an awareness of the pattern and they're going to recognize it early. They're not going to ignore the red flags. They're going to see them and take note. Number 2, they're going to have boundaries. They're not going to reward inconsistency with more attention or more affection. And number 3, they're not going to tie their self-worth to being chosen by the other person. They know that their worth comes from other sources than their partner's attention. The securely attached person isn't going to just stay in this place of observation. They're also going to take action, but their action is going to look different. They're going to voice their concern to the other person if there's a level of commitment. If there's no commitment at all and it's really not established as a relationship, they're probably just going to say, you know what, this isn't for me. I get a sense that this person's not ready for a relationship, and they're going to divert their attention other places and not pursue that individual. But if there is some level of commitment and that commitment shifted into this breadcrumbing landscape, I keep doing this. I feel like the guy with salt. It's like bouncing it off his elbows. But if they shift into this place where it goes from commitment to breadcrumbs, they're going to address it, but they're going to do it without criticism and blame, looking more like an observation rather than condemning the other person for the distance. So I'll give you the example. It's not, and this is more of what the anxiously attached would do, is either pursue, people please, try to be enough, or they get frustrated and critical. What's going on? You never give me attention anymore. You don't care about me. Pointing out the negative behavior and almost diagnosing their partner as unloving or uncaring. But the securely attached person approaches it not from a place of fear. And so therefore their language is going to sound different. They're going to say things like, hey, I've noticed there's a little bit of a shift in our relationship. It used to be easier for us to find time. It seems like you used to be more available, or, you know, you were a bit more responsive before, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Can you help me understand what's happening here? Right? Keeping it really open-ended to see if there's deeper reasons or an explanation. Because maybe the individual's going through some sort of grief. Maybe something happened in their life. Maybe it has nothing to do with the relationship. And it gives you, the two of you, an opportunity to talk about it. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that, you know, you had this big thing happen in your family and you were like trying not to burden me with it. I appreciate you sharing that. You don't have to distance. You can stay close. I'm here to support you, right? That leads to a healthy conversation where you uncover that it might not actually be their fears. In that same conversation, you might discover that it actually is their avoidant fears. And it will give you, if you're the securely attached person, and your partner who's maybe having an avoidant type trigger, an opportunity to talk through it, where you can set some boundaries, right? Maybe they admit, you know, whenever I get close in a relationship or things start to get serious, I get scared and I start to back off. Wow, that would be amazing to hear them actually say that or admit that, because then you have something workable. You can actually work through that. It's possible. It's not guaranteed, but it's possible, because then there's an open dialogue and discussion around what accountability they're going to take for that pattern. And the securely attached person is going to set boundaries in that moment. They're going to share things like, hey, I totally understand that. I want to be empathetic and understanding of your feelings, but I also am not okay with putting up with a shift in our level of commitment to one another, right? Beautiful boundary to explain. If this pattern of breadcrumbing continues, the securely attached person is going to go ahead and step back from a place of peace, not from a place of drama. It's a simple difference between you're the worst, you're never going to do this, you treat me like garbage, I'm out of here, and slamming the door, to saying, hey, listen, I'm realizing that right now, maybe you don't have the capacity to give me what I want in this relationship, and I deserve better. So I'm going to go ahead and go in another direction. You know, I appreciate the time we've had. love you, see you, bye. It's much more of a peaceful withdrawal. Again, because they're not taking the distance as a personal rejection. They're just seeing it as the other person's pattern playing out, the avoidant tendency coming up. And the securely attached person is going to see this as just a pattern with one individual, and they're not going to create beliefs around all people, right? If, like, let's say you date an avoidant man and you get the breadcrumbing happening at the end, you can go one of two directions. You can believe that every guy is like that and this is just how it's going to be, and externalize this big negative belief that I'm never going to find love and this and that. Or you can, and this is what the securely attached person does, is they walk away saying, you know what, that's a bummer that happened in this relationship and that this pattern came up for my partner. I wish it was different. Unfortunately, it's not. So I'm going to move on in hope, believing that I'm going to find the right person eventually. You hear the difference is that they see one bit of data, one relationship as evidence that all relationships will be that way. That's the anxiously attached. And the securely attached will just see this as one bit of data amongst many points of data that they could look at around how relationships could go. Could they get into another situation like this again? Yeah, they know that. And quite frankly, they're okay with it because they're not going to spend a long time in a relationship or a situationship, whatever you call it, where they're receiving just breadcrumbs. The biggest difference between an anxiously attached person and a securely attached person, and why they can survive breadcrumbing differently, where the anxious will come away with negative beliefs about themselves, about relationships. They'll sabotage future relationships based on fears from past breadcrumbing experiences, and they'll be breadcrumbed more often, versus the secure. Well, they'll move from that situation into more healthy relationships, their self-worth still intact. It comes down to this one concept. The securely attached do not chase breadcrumbs simply because they know how to bake their own loaf of bread. So what I mean by that is the securely attached person, first and foremost, knows how to fill up their own emotional cup. They know that they're enough. They know that they have their own worth and value. And so therefore, they're not desperate to feed off the breadcrumbs of somebody else. When you know your own worth, crumbs no longer feel like connection. If breadcrumbing makes you anxious, it doesn't mean that you're weak. It means that that situation is bringing up an old wound for you. The wounds and the fears of not being chosen and being abandoned. So what are some of the takeaways here? If you're being breadcrumbed consistently, number one, look to just the patterns and the behavior of the securely attached. Even if you don't feel emotionally like you can commit to the more healthy behavior, do it anyway. Right? There's a difference between actually having a heart change that allows you to naturally show up in a secure way. And that's the long-term goal. The long-term goal is to build deep sense of security within yourself. And that's ultimately what I would help you with if you were to join the Secure Self Club or be part of any of our work, is to work on the core so that you naturally behave like the secure version, the person that I described as the securely attached. But in the meantime, the short-term solution is to think about, okay, at least changing the behavioral level. If you can't change the emotional yet, because maybe there's some deeper work that we need to do there, but if you can't change the emotion, at least work to change the behavior. It might be scary. It might be terrifying to set that boundary and say, hey, I can't have a relationship like this. It might be terrifying to step away from a newly found fling that seems so awesome where you're not actually getting much attention, simply because you have that fear of abandonment or the fear of rejection or the fear of not being chosen. But my invitation to you is to trust in and have hope in the more secure way of behaving and follow that path. If you do want the deeper heart change and becoming securely attached, I've got a free gift to give you. It's my free seminar. It's called From Anxious to Secure. It's only 15 minutes. And over the 15 minutes, I teach you the exact steps that you need to take. The essential elements is what I call it, that need to be included in your healing process if you're going to be successful in going from anxious to secure. Too many people are stuck going to therapy, reading books, listening to podcasts, and they don't feel like they're actually making progress. If that sounds like you, I guarantee you watch this 15-minute video and you'll have clarity on why you're not making progress so that you can make those little adjustments to your own healing process and make some real progress and become the secure version of the individuals that we were talking about here today. The link for that seminar is found in the description of this video. If you liked this video and want to show your appreciation, please tap the like button. And if you want to learn more, go ahead and subscribe for future videos. I'll see you in the next one.